The story of Rome begins in the realm of myth and legend, an essential part of the city's identity. According to Roman tradition, the city was founded on April 21st, 753 BCE, by Romulus, a direct descendant of Aeneas, the Trojan hero. Aeneas himself was a central figure in Roman mythology, believed to have fled the burning city of Troy after its fall, as recounted in Virgil's epic, the Aeneid. Guided by divine intervention, Aeneas's journey eventually led his descendants to Italy, intertwining Rome's history with the larger mythological framework of the ancient world. The founding myth continues with Romulus and his twin brother Remus, born to Rhea Silvia, a Vestal virgin, and the god Mars, signifying Rome's divine connection to war and leadership. The twins were cast adrift on the Tiber River by their uncle Amulius, who sought to usurp their rightful claim to the throne of Alba Longa. Miraculously, they were saved by a she-wolf, or Lupa, who nursed them in a cave later known as the Lupercal. This image of the wolf nurturing the twins became one of the most iconic symbols of Roman identity. As the brothers grew, they overthrew Amulius and set out to establish a new city near the site where they had been rescued. However, their collaboration was short-lived. A dispute over where to build the city and who would rule led to a tragic conflict. Romulus killed Remus in a fit of rage, thus becoming the sole founder and first king of Rome. This act of fratricide, though dark, symbolized the harsh realities of power and ambition, traits that would come to define Rome throughout its history. Romulus named the city after himself and began building its walls. Under his leadership, Rome's early society took shape. According to legend, he created the Senate, an advisory council that laid the foundation for Rome's political system. To populate the fledgling city, Romulus invited exiles and outcasts from nearby regions, creating a diverse and ambitious citizenry. One of the most famous episodes from this era is the rape of the Sabine women, where Romulus and his men abducted women from neighboring tribes to secure the city's future generations. Though controversial, this tale emphasized Rome's drive for survival and expansion. The mythical origins of Rome are a blend of divine intervention, heroism, and human flaws. These stories not only captivated ancient audiences, but also provided a sense of destiny and purpose, setting the stage for the remarkable history that would follow. The early years of Rome's history were dominated by its monarchy, a period that lasted over 2 centuries and laid the foundation for its political, religious, and social structures. According to tradition, Rome was ruled by a succession of 7 kings, beginning with Romulus and ending with Tarquin the Proud. These monarchs played a vital role in shaping the nascent city-state, transforming it from a small settlement on the banks of the Tiber River into a burgeoning society with organized governance. Romulus, the first king, not only founded the city, but also established many of its initial institutions. He created the Roman Senate, a council of elder statesmen, to advise the king, which would later evolve into a cornerstone of Roman political life. Additionally, Romulus is credited with organizing the population into tribes and creating a military structure that allowed Rome to defend itself against neighboring tribes. After Romulus, a mix of Roman and Etruscan kings took the throne, each contributing unique advancements to the city. The second king, Numa Pompilius, was known for his focus on religion and peace. He is said to have instituted many of Rome's religious practices, including the worship of major deities like Jupiter, Mars, and Vesta. Numa also founded the Vestal Virgins and established the office of the Pontifex Maximus, setting a precedent for the intertwining of religion and governance in Roman society. The subsequent kings continued this legacy of development. Tullus Hostilius, the third king, emphasized military expansion, famously conquering Alba Longa, a rival Latin city. Ancus Marcius, the fourth king, is remembered for building infrastructure, such as the first bridge over the Tiber, the Pons Sublicius, and the construction of the port city of Ostia, which would become crucial to Rome's economy. The later kings, particularly those of Etruscan origin, had a profound influence on Rome. Tarquinius Priscus, the fifth king, introduced significant urban planning projects, including the construction of the Circus Maximus, a vast arena for chariot races and public spectacles. Servius Tullius, the sixth king, implemented the first census, reorganizing the Roman population into classes based on wealth. This reform laid the groundwork for Rome's later military and political systems. However, the monarchy's influence was not without controversy. The final king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, known as Tarquin the Proud, ruled with an iron fist. His reign was marked by tyranny and a disregard for the traditions established by his predecessors. The catalyst for the monarchy's downfall came with a scandal involving his son, Sextus Tarquinius, whose actions led to a revolt by the Roman people. This uprising culminated in the expulsion of Tarquin and the establishment of the Roman Republic in 509 BCE. Despite its eventual end, the monarchy was a crucial era in Rome's development. It provided the framework for the institutions and culture that would define Rome's identity for centuries. The legacy of the kings, their achievements, and even their flaws became a reference point for the Romans as they transitioned to a republic and beyond. The Roman Republic marked a dramatic transformation in the governance of Rome, as the monarchy gave way to a system rooted in shared power and civic responsibility. This era began in 509 BCE when the last king, Tarquin the Proud, was overthrown by a coalition of aristocrats led by Lucius Junius Brutus. The catalyst for this revolt was not only Tarquin's tyranny, but also the public outrage following the violation of a noble woman, Lucretia, by Tarquin's son. Her tragic death became a rallying cry for liberty and justice, inspiring the Roman people to expel the monarchy and vow never to be ruled by a king again. In place of the monarchy, the Romans established the Republic, residential publica, meaning the public affair, a government where power rested in the hands of elected officials and the citizenry. Central to this new system were the two annually elected consuls, who held executive authority and served as checks on each other's power. The consuls were supported by other magistrates, such as praetors, quaestors, and aediles, each responsible for specific administrative functions. This system aimed to prevent any individual from amassing too much authority, reflecting the Romans' deep distrust of concentrated power after their experience with the kings. The Senate, an advisory body from the monarchy era, gained significant influence during the Republic. Composed primarily of patricians or members of the aristocratic elite, the Senate shaped foreign and domestic policy. It became the heart of Roman political life, guiding the Republic through its most challenging times. However, the concentration of power among the patricians led to tensions with the plebeians, or common citizens, who sought greater representation and rights. This tension sparked the struggle of the orders, a centuries-long conflict between the patricians and plebeians. The plebeians demanded political reforms and safeguards against exploitation by the elite. Through organized protests, such as secessions, where they withdrew from the city en masse, the plebeians gradually secured key concessions. These included the establishment of the office of the tribune of the plebs, officials with the power to veto decisions harmful to the common people, and the codification of laws in the 12 Tables, which provided transparency and protection under the law. The Republic was also defined by its military expansion. Rome's citizen soldiers, organized into legions, were the backbone of its power. During this era, Rome fought numerous wars, including the Samnite Wars, which secured its dominance over central Italy, and the Punic Wars against Carthage, which established Rome as the preeminent power in the Western Mediterranean. These conflicts not only expanded Rome's territory, but also brought wealth and cultural influences that enriched its society. However, the rapid growth of Rome also presented challenges. As the Republic extended its reach, it faced the problem of governing distant provinces and integrating diverse populations. The strain of managing this vast empire exacerbated internal divisions. Wealth from conquest enriched the elite while impoverishing the small farmers who formed the backbone of the Republic's army. This economic disparity fueled social unrest and led to the rise of populist leaders who sought to challenge the status quo. The later years of the Republic were marked by increasing political instability. Ambitious generals like Marius, Sulla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar leveraged their military success to gain political power, often bypassing traditional republican institutions. Civil wars erupted as these leaders vied for control, undermining the principles of shared governance that had defined the republic's early days. The struggle of the orders was a defining chapter in the history of the Roman Republic, spanning over 2 centuries of social and political conflict between the patricians, the aristocratic ruling class, and the plebeians, the common people. This prolonged struggle shaped the very fabric of Roman society, laying the groundwork for a more inclusive political system, though it was far from perfect. When the Republic was established in 509 BCE, its governance was heavily skewed in favor of the patricians. These families controlled the Senate and most of the magistracies, wielding significant influence over laws, policies, and religious practices. The plebeians, who made up the majority of the population, were largely excluded from meaningful political participation. They were also burdened by economic hardships, as many plebeian farmers found themselves in debt and at the mercy of patrician creditors, who could legally seize their land or enslave them for unpaid debts. Frustrated by this inequity, the plebeians began to demand reforms that would protect their interests and grant them a voice in governance. One of their most effective strategies was the cessatio plebis, a form of collective strike in which the plebeians would withdraw from the city and refuse to work or serve in the army. The first such secession, around 494 BCE, took place during a military crisis, forcing the patricians to negotiate. This led to the creation of the office of the tribune of the plebs, officials elected by the plebeians to represent their interests and veto decisions they deemed harmful. Over time, the plebeians achieved a series of important victories that gradually eroded patrician dominance. One of the most significant milestones was the codification of Roman laws in the 12 Tables around 450 BCE. Prior to this, laws were unwritten and subject to the interpretation of patrician magistrates, leaving plebeians vulnerable to arbitrary judgments. The 12 Tables provided a transparent and consistent legal framework, ensuring that all citizens, regardless of class, could know and understand the laws. Despite these advances, the struggle was far from over. Many plebeians continued to face economic challenges, particularly as Rome's military conquests expanded its territory. Wealth from conquered lands often flowed to the patricians, who consolidated their power by acquiring large estates worked by slaves. Small farmers, unable to compete, frequently lost their land, further deepening economic inequality. This led to calls for land reforms, championed by populist leaders like the Gracchi brothers in the later Republic. Another significant development in the struggle of the orders was the gradual opening of political offices to plebeians. Initially, only patricians could hold the highest magistracies, such as the consulship. However, through persistent advocacy, the plebeians secured the right to hold these positions. The passage of the Licinian Section laws in 367 BC mandated that at least one consul be a plebeian, breaking the patricians' monopoly on power. Over time, other magistracies and priesthoods were also opened to plebeians, culminating in the Lex Hortensia of 287 BCE, which made resolutions passed by the plebeian council binding on all Romans. The struggle of the orders not only reshaped Roman governance, but also fostered a unique sense of shared identity among Romans. While the patricians and plebeians often clashed, they also recognized the need to cooperate for the survival and prosperity of the Republic. This uneasy balance of power became a hallmark of Roman politics, with mechanisms like the veto and checks on authority reflecting the lessons learned during this period of conflict. The period of military expansion during the Roman Republic marked one of the most transformative eras in Rome's history, solidifying its status as a dominant power in the Mediterranean world. This expansion was driven not only by a desire for security and resources, but also by Rome's cultural ethos, which celebrated conquest, glory, and the spoils of war. Among the most critical episodes in this period were the Punic Wars, 3 momentous conflicts with Carthage that reshaped the Mediterranean's political landscape and propelled Rome to unprecedented heights. In the early years of the Republic, Rome's focus was on consolidating control over the Italian peninsula. Through a series of wars against neighboring tribes, including the Samnites and Etruscans, Rome established itself as the preeminent power in Italy. Its military was central to this success, with the Roman legion demonstrating superior organization, discipline, and adaptability. Rome's policy of granting varying degrees of citizenship or alliances to conquered peoples also helped secure loyalty and manpower for future campaigns. Rome's ambitions, however, soon brought it into conflict with Carthage, a wealthy and powerful city-state located in North Africa. Carthage controlled a vast maritime empire and dominated trade in the western Mediterranean. The rivalry between Rome and Carthage culminated in the First Punic War, 264 to 241 BC, which began over a dispute in Sicily. This was Rome's first large-scale naval conflict, and despite initial setbacks, it adapted by building a fleet and employing innovative tactics like the corvus, a boarding device that allowed Roman soldiers to fight at sea as if on land. Rome's eventual victory in the First Punic War led to the annexation of Sicily, marking its first overseas province. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, proved to be the most dramatic and challenging of the three conflicts. It was during this war that Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general, became one of Rome's most formidable adversaries. In an audacious campaign, Hannibal crossed the Alps with his army, including war elephants, to invade Italy. His victories at battles like Cannae, 216 BC, where he inflicted devastating losses on the Roman legions, left Rome on the brink of collapse. Yet, Rome's resilience was unmatched. It avoided direct confrontation with Hannibal after Cannae, instead adopting a strategy of attrition under the leadership of Quintus Fabius Maximus, known as the Cunctator or the Delayer. While Hannibal ravaged the Italian countryside, Rome struck at Carthage's holdings elsewhere. In Spain, the young and ambitious general Scipio Africanus systematically dismantled Carthaginian power, culminating in his invasion of North Africa. In 202 BCE, Scipio decisively defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama, forcing Carthage to sue for peace. The Second Punic War ended with Carthage severely weakened, stripped of its territories, and burdened with heavy indemnities. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BC, was less about immediate threats and more about eliminating Carthage as a potential rival. By this time, Carthage had recovered economically, alarming some Roman leaders, including the influential Senator Cato the Elder, who famously ended his speeches with Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. Rome launched a final campaign, besieging the city of Carthage. After 3 years of resistance, Carthage was ultimately destroyed, its population enslaved, and its land salted to ensure no resurgence. This war marked the complete annihilation of Rome's greatest rival and the consolidation of its dominance over the western Mediterranean. Beyond the Punic Wars, Rome's military expansion continued across Greece, Macedonia, and Asia Minor. These conquests brought immense wealth and cultural influences to Rome, but also created new challenges. The influx of slaves and plunder widened economic disparities, and the administration of distant provinces strained the republic's political system. The Punic Wars and Rome's broader military campaigns during this period laid the foundation for its transformation from a regional power to an empire. The victories showcased the strength of Rome's legions, the adaptability of its leadership, and the determination of its people to prevail against formidable odds. They also set a precedent for Rome's expansionist policies, which would define its trajectory for centuries. The period of the Roman Republic was not only a time of territorial expansion, but also one of profound economic growth and social transformation. These changes were driven by Rome's conquests, trade, and the influx of wealth and resources from its expanding empire. However, these developments also introduced significant challenges, including economic inequality, social unrest, and the need to integrate a growing and diverse population. Rome's military conquests brought vast riches into the Republic. Victorious generals returned to the city with spoils of war, including precious metals, livestock, and enslaved peoples. Provinces acquired during this period, such as Sicily, North Africa, and Spain, became important sources of grain, olive oil, wine, and other goods, fueling Rome's economy and providing a steady supply of resources for its growing population. The increased availability of goods allowed for a flourishing trade network that connected Rome to distant parts of the Mediterranean, including Greece, Egypt, and Asia Minor. The wealth pouring into Rome facilitated the growth of an elite class of landowners and merchants who controlled much of the Republic's economic resources. Many of these elites used their wealth to acquire vast estates, known as latifundia, which were worked by enslaved laborers. These estates became a dominant feature of the Roman countryside, producing agricultural goods on a massive scale for both domestic consumption and export. This concentration of wealth and land in the hands of a few, however, came at the expense of small farmers, many of whom struggled to compete with the large-scale production of the latifundia. The displacement of small farmers had far-reaching consequences for Roman society. Many rural farmers, unable to maintain their lands, were forced to sell their properties and migrate to urban centers, particularly Rome, in search of work. This led to the growth of a large urban proletariat, often unemployed or underemployed, which became a source of social tension. These displaced citizens, lacking stable livelihoods, were vulnerable to economic instability and often relied on state-sponsored distributions of grain, known as the cura annoni, to survive. The influx of enslaved labor also had a significant impact on Roman society and economy. Enslaved individuals, captured during Rome's conquests, were used extensively in agriculture, mining, and domestic service. Their labor drove the economy of the latifundia and allowed wealthy Romans to amass even greater fortunes. However, this reliance on enslaved labor created an unstable system, as enslaved populations occasionally rebelled against their conditions. The most famous of these uprisings was the Third Servile War, 73 to 71 BC, led by Spartacus, which posed a serious challenge to Roman authority and underscored the tensions within the Republic. Social inequality and economic disparities increasingly became sources of conflict during this period. The widening gap between the elite and the lower classes led to demands for reform. Populist leaders such as the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius, and Gaius emerged to advocate for policies aimed at addressing these issues. They proposed measures such as land redistribution to restore small farmers and alleviate poverty among the urban poor. These reforms, however, faced fierce opposition from the Senate and the aristocracy, who saw them as threats to their power and wealth. In addition to domestic challenges, the administration of Rome's expanding territories introduced new complexities. Provinces were governed by Roman officials, often former magistrates, who were given significant autonomy to collect taxes and enforce laws. Corruption and exploitation by provincial governors became widespread, as many sought to enrich themselves at the expense of the local population. This not only created resentment among Rome's subjects, but also led to calls for greater oversight and accountability. The economic and social changes of the Republic were transformative, reshaping Roman society in profound ways. However, these developments also exposed the limitations of the Republic's political institutions, which were ill-equipped to address the complexities of managing a vast and diverse empire. The pressures of inequality, social unrest, and governance challenges set the stage for the political upheavals that would ultimately lead to the Republic's decline. The decline of the Roman Republic was a protracted process marked by political instability, social unrest, and the emergence of populist leaders who challenged the traditional order. These figures capitalized on the growing discontent among the lower classes and the Republic's inability to address systemic issues, such as economic inequality and the pressures of governing an expanding empire. The resulting turbulence undermined the foundations of the Republican system and set the stage for the eventual transition to autocracy. One of the key factors contributing to the Republic's decline was the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of the elite. Rome's conquests had brought enormous wealth into the city, but this prosperity was unevenly distributed. The senatorial aristocracy, who controlled the Senate and most of the Republic's resources, used their positions to enrich themselves further. Meanwhile, the small farmers and urban poor, the backbone of Roman society and its armies, found themselves increasingly marginalized. This economic disparity created fertile ground for leaders who promised reforms to redress these imbalances. The Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, were among the first populist leaders to emerge during this turbulent period. In the late 2nd century BCE, they championed reforms aimed at addressing land inequality and supporting the impoverished plebeians. Tiberius, as a tribune of the plebs, proposed redistributing public land to landless citizens, a move that directly threatened the wealth of the elite. His efforts met fierce resistance from the Senate, culminating in his assassination in 133 BCE. Gaius, following in his brother's footsteps, expanded the scope of reforms to include subsidized grain distributions and granting citizenship to Rome's Italian allies. He too faced violent opposition, ultimately leading to his death in 121 BCE. The violent suppression of the Gracchi marked a turning point in Roman politics, where political disagreements increasingly gave way to bloodshed. The late Republic also witnessed the rise of powerful generals who leveraged their military successes to gain political influence, often bypassing traditional Republican norms. Gaius Marius, a general and politician, restructured the Roman military, allowing landless citizens to enlist in the army. This reform professionalized the military, but also created legions that were loyal primarily to their commanders rather than the state. Marius's repeated consulships and his rivalry with Lucius Cornelius Sulla exemplified the breakdown of traditional checks and balances. Sulla's rise to power highlighted the growing trend of military intervention in politics. After a bitter struggle with Marius and his supporters, Sulla marched his army on Rome, an unprecedented act that demonstrated the Republic's vulnerability to military force. Once in control, Sulla declared himself dictator, implementing a series of constitutional reforms aimed at strengthening the Senate and curbing the power of the popular assemblies and tribunes. However, these reforms did little to address the underlying issues plaguing the Republic and were largely undone after his retirement. The rise of populist leaders continued in the mid-1st century BCE with figures like Pompey the Great, Marcus Licinius Crassus, and Julius Caesar. These men formed the First Triumvirate, an informal political alliance that allowed them to dominate Roman politics. Caesar, in particular, emerged as a transformative figure. His military conquests, including his campaign in Gaul, brought him immense wealth and popularity. However, his ambitions and disregard for Republican traditions led to a power struggle with the Senate and his former ally Pompey. The rivalry between Caesar and Pompey escalated into a full-scale civil war, with Caesar ultimately emerging victorious. In 49 BCE, Caesar famously crossed the Rubicon River with his army, defying the Senate and signaling the end of the Republic as a functioning system. After defeating Pompey and consolidating his power, Caesar was appointed dictator for life, a title that underscored his dominance, but also alienated many senators who viewed him as a threat to the Republic's ideals. The transition from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire was marked by the rise of charismatic leaders who capitalized on the Republic's weaknesses, culminating in the concentration of power under a single ruler. Julius Caesar and his successor, Augustus, played pivotal roles in this transformation, reshaping Rome's political structure and setting the foundation for imperial rule. This period, spanning the late 1st century BCE, was characterized by political turmoil, civil war, and sweeping reforms that altered the trajectory of Roman history. Julius Caesar's ascent to power represented the culmination of decades of instability within the Republic. As a member of the First Triumvirate alongside Pompey the Great and Marcus Licinius Crassus, Caesar leveraged his alliances to secure political influence and military command. His campaign in Gaul, 58 to 50 BCE, not only expanded Rome's territory, but also bolstered his personal wealth and popularity. Caesar's detailed commentaries on his military exploits, such as the Gallic Wars, served as effective propaganda, portraying him as a hero of Rome and cementing his reputation among the Roman populace and his soldiers. However, Caesar's growing power and ambition alarmed the Senate and his rival, Pompey. When the Senate ordered him to relinquish his command and return to Rome as a private citizen, Caesar defied the decree, crossing the Rubicon River in 49 BCE with his army. This act of defiance against the Republic's authority ignited a civil war. Caesar's forces quickly gained the upper hand, and after defeating Pompey, who fled and was later assassinated in Egypt, Caesar emerged as the undisputed ruler of Rome. Once in power, Caesar initiated a series of reforms aimed at stabilizing and centralizing the republic. He expanded the Senate, granting membership to provincial elites, which weakened the traditional power base of the Roman aristocracy. He restructured the calendar, introducing the Julian calendar, which remains the basis for the modern Gregorian calendar. Additionally, Caesar enacted measures to address economic inequality, including land redistribution to veterans and the urban poor. While these reforms earned him support among the lower classes, they also deepened the resentment of the aristocracy, who saw him as a dictator undermining republican principles. In 44 BCE, Caesar declared himself Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life, a title that symbolized his dominance but also solidified fears that he intended to establish a monarchy. This perception led to his assassination on the Ides of March, a plot orchestrated by senators, including Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus. They believed his death would restore the Republic, but instead, it plunged Rome into further chaos. The power vacuum left by Caesar's assassination set the stage for a struggle among his successors. The aftermath of Caesar's death saw the formation of the Second Triumvirate, composed of his heir, Octavian, later Augustus, Mark Antony, and Marcus Aemilius Lepidus. This alliance sought to avenge Caesar's murder and consolidate power. The triumvirate initially succeeded in defeating Caesar's assassins at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE. However, internal rivalries soon emerged, particularly between Octavian and Antony. Antony's alliance with Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, further alienated him from Rome, as Octavian used this relationship to portray Antony as a threat to Roman values and sovereignty. The final confrontation between Octavian and Antony occurred at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. Octavian's forces decisively defeated Antony and Cleopatra, who fled to Egypt and later committed suicide. This victory left Octavian as the sole ruler of Rome, marking the end of the Republic's era of shared governance and the beginning of autocracy. Octavian skillfully consolidated power while maintaining the facade of Republican traditions. In 27 BCE, he was granted the title Augustus by the Senate, symbolizing his authority as Rome's first emperor. Augustus avoided the overt titles of monarchy, instead presenting himself as the princeps, first citizen, a role that allowed him to wield supreme authority while preserving the illusion of republican institutions. Under Augustus, the Roman Empire began an era of relative stability and prosperity known as the Pax Romana, a period that defined the new imperial order. The Roman Republic's transformation into the Roman Empire was not solely a political or military shift, but also a profound cultural evolution. As Rome expanded its territories and encountered diverse peoples, its identity as a city-state rooted in republican ideals began to blend with a more cosmopolitan, imperial vision. This period saw the emergence of a more unified Roman identity, one that embraced the influences of the Hellenistic world, local cultures within the provinces, and the complexities of governing a vast and multicultural empire. Roman culture, at its core, was built upon values such as discipline, duty, virtus, manliness or excellence, and the importance of the family and the state. These ideals were shaped during the Republic, where the focus was on the welfare of the state and the collective well-being of Roman citizens. However, as Rome's reach expanded far beyond the Italian peninsula, it came into contact with Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Eastern traditions, significantly influencing Roman thought, art, religion, and philosophy. One of the most significant aspects of this cultural transformation was the Roman adoption and adaptation of Hellenistic culture. The Greeks had long been known for their intellectual achievements, artistic expression, and philosophical advancements. Under Roman rule, Greek culture became deeply intertwined with Roman identity. Roman elites began to commission Greek-inspired sculptures, architecture, and literature. Temples, such as those built during Augustus' reign, were modeled after Greek designs, showcasing a synthesis of Roman practicality and Greek aesthetics. Additionally, Roman education increasingly emphasized the study of Greek philosophy, history, and rhetoric alongside Latin literature. In terms of religion, Roman polytheism evolved to incorporate deities and rituals from conquered peoples. While Roman gods like Jupiter, Mars, and Venus remained central, the pantheon expanded to include gods from other cultures, such as Isis from Egypt, Mithras from Persia, and the Celtic deities from Gaul. This process of religious syncretism allowed Rome to maintain religious cohesion across its empire, while also respecting local customs and traditions. The rise of imperial Rome also introduced significant changes in citizenship and cultural integration. With the expansion of Roman influence, more people sought Roman citizenship, as it brought not only legal rights, but also the prestige of Roman identity. Augustus, for example, granted Roman citizenship to more provincial elites and soldiers who had demonstrated loyalty to Rome, ensuring that the empire was tied more closely through shared legal and cultural institutions. At the same time, the broader cultural diversity of the empire created tension, particularly as local traditions and languages were sometimes suppressed in favor of Latin. However, Roman efforts to integrate these diverse populations often struck a balance between maintaining Roman authority and acknowledging local identities. This balance became a hallmark of Roman governance, as seen in the use of local leaders as client kings and regional governors to manage the provinces, fostering cooperation rather than outright conquest. Roman values, however, were not entirely preserved. The shift from a republic to an empire brought about increased centralization of power, which diminished the role of traditional republican institutions like the Senate. While Augustus maintained the facade of republican governance, his policies ultimately reduced the power of the Senate and the collective decision-making process that had characterized the republic. This transition reflected a cultural shift toward a more autocratic and hierarchical system, where loyalty was owed to the emperor rather than to the collective will of the Roman people. In literature and philosophy, Roman thought shifted from a focus on civic duty to a more personal exploration of themes like fate, power, and the human condition. Stoicism, in particular, became a popular philosophy among Roman elites, offering a framework for accepting the uncertainties of life and the impermanence of power, which was increasingly tied to the role of the emperor. Overall, the transformation of Roman culture during this period was a complex process of assimilation and adaptation. As Rome grew into a vast empire, its identity evolved to encompass a diverse array of traditions while maintaining a core set of Roman ideals. This synthesis of cultures not only enriched Roman society, but also ensured the lasting influence of Roman identity well beyond the boundaries of the ancient world. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was a complex and multifaceted process influenced by a variety of internal and external factors. As Rome expanded its influence across the Mediterranean and beyond, the challenges of governing a vast and diverse empire became increasingly apparent. From administrative difficulties and economic strain to political corruption and the rise of barbarian invasions, these factors collectively eroded the strength of the Western Roman state, ultimately leading to its decline. One of the primary challenges facing Roman governance during the late empire was the sheer size and complexity of the empire. With territories stretching from Britain in the west to Egypt in the east, managing the day-to-day affairs of such a vast realm required an increasingly sophisticated administrative system. However, this system was often overwhelmed by logistical issues, such as the difficulty of collecting taxes, maintaining infrastructure, and ensuring security across distant provinces. Provincial governors, who held significant power over local affairs, often ruled with relative autonomy, which sometimes led to corruption and exploitation of the local population. The decentralized nature of governance made it difficult for Rome to respond effectively to both internal rebellions and external threats. Economically, the Western Roman Empire faced a multitude of crises. As Rome's armies continued to expand and maintain control over its vast territories, the burden of financing military campaigns placed significant strain on the economy. Heavy taxation was imposed on local populations, often leading to unrest, particularly in regions far from Rome. Additionally, the Roman economy relied heavily on a system of agriculture, and with the increasing dominance of large estates, latifundia, small farmers found it difficult to compete. This economic disparity further weakened the social fabric of the empire, as the gap between rich landowners and impoverished laborers widened. Another critical challenge was the reliance on slave labor. While the use of enslaved people allowed Roman elites to maintain their vast estates and supply armies with manpower, this system became increasingly unsustainable. The influx of enslaved individuals from wars and conquests created a large, disenfranchised population with little to no economic or social mobility. Slave revolts, such as those led by Spartacus, highlighted the dangers of this system and further destabilized the empire's structure. The Western Roman Empire also struggled with political fragmentation and instability. The balance of power shifted dramatically from the Senate and traditional republican institutions to the emperor and his administration. As emperors consolidated power, the need for military strength increased, with more frequent military appointments and less attention given to civic governance. The Roman Senate, which had once played a central role in decision-making, found its influence diminished over time, relegated to symbolic duties rather than meaningful legislative authority. This transition eroded the traditional republican values of shared governance and the rule of law, leaving emperors vulnerable to assassination and political intrigue. External pressures also significantly impacted the stability of the Western Roman Empire. By the 4th and 5th centuries CE, Rome faced an increasingly organized threat from Germanic tribes such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Ostrogoths, as well as invasions from Huns under leaders like Attila the Hun. These invasions strained the Roman military, which struggled to repel such powerful, well-coordinated forces. Rome's legions, once regarded as invincible, were no longer able to maintain control over all its provinces, leading to the loss of key territories, including Britannia, Gaul, and North Africa. The final blow came with the sack of Rome in 410 CE by the Visigoths under King Alaric, a symbol of the empire's unraveling. In response to these challenges, Roman emperors attempted various reforms to restore order. Constantine the Great, for instance, shifted the empire's capital eastward to Byzantium, later Constantinople, signaling a shift toward a more Eastern-centric focus for governance and defense. However, these reforms came too late to halt the decline. The Western Roman Empire's continued fragmentation was inevitable, as local rulers and provincial elites increasingly asserted control over their territories, leading to the eventual breakdown of centralized Roman authority. Ultimately, the fall of the Western Roman Empire was not a singular event, but a long process of decline driven by a combination of internal weaknesses and external pressures. The empire's inability to adapt to the challenges of governance, coupled with the relentless rise of barbarian invasions and the decline of civic unity, sealed its fate. By the 5th century CE, the Western Roman Empire had ceased to exist, replaced by a patchwork of independent barbarian kingdoms and successor states, marking the end of ancient Roman rule in the West. The Byzantine Empire, often considered the eastern continuation of the Roman Empire, played a crucial role in preserving Roman institutions, culture, and influence for over 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Established in 330 CE by Emperor Constantine the Great with the founding of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, the Byzantine Empire maintained many aspects of Roman governance, law, and military strategy, while adapting to the political, religious, and cultural changes of the medieval world. One of the defining characteristics of the Byzantine Empire was its ability to preserve and refine Roman law and administration. Under the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE, the Byzantine legal system underwent a comprehensive overhaul with the creation of the Corpus Juris Civilis, body of civil law. This compilation of Roman law became the foundation of Byzantine governance, influencing not only future legal systems within Europe, but also shaping the development of Western legal traditions. The emphasis on centralized control, bureaucratic organization, and a strong, authoritative leadership mirrored the Roman model, but was adapted to fit the needs of a more fragmented and religiously diverse medieval world. Justinian's reign also saw significant architectural achievements, including the construction of the Hagia Sophia, a symbol of Byzantine grandeur and religious authority. Byzantine art, characterized by its religious iconography and mosaics, evolved from Roman styles while incorporating Eastern influences from regions such as Persia and Syria. Despite the Eastern shift of the empire, the architectural styles remained heavily influenced by classical Roman design, demonstrating the continuity between the ancient and medieval periods. Religiously, the Byzantine Empire was deeply intertwined with Christianity. After Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity with the Edict of Milan in 313 CE, the Byzantine Empire played a crucial role in spreading and institutionalizing Christian beliefs throughout its territories. By the time of Justinian, Christianity had become the dominant force in Byzantine culture, with the Eastern Orthodox Church becoming a central institution in political and social life. The tensions between the Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church in the West would later lead to the Great Schism in 1054 CE, further emphasizing the distinctiveness of Byzantine Christianity compared to its Western counterpart. The Byzantine Empire also preserved and expanded upon Roman administrative and military traditions. The Byzantine military adapted Roman tactics to meet the challenges of a rapidly changing world. While the empire retained its reliance on infantry, it also incorporated innovative strategies such as the use of Greek fire, advanced siege techniques, and diplomacy with neighboring states. The Byzantine military was instrumental in defending the empire against invasions by various groups, including the Slavs, Arabs, and later, the Ottoman Turks. Byzantine society, while heavily influenced by Roman foundations, also adapted to a more decentralized structure. Cities like Constantinople became centers of trade, diplomacy, and learning, attracting merchants, scholars, and religious leaders from across Europe, Asia, and Africa. This cosmopolitan approach ensured the empire's influence extended far beyond its borders. Furthermore, Byzantine society emphasized education and the preservation of classical texts, ensuring that Roman philosophy, history, and literature were maintained through the centuries, eventually passing them down to the Renaissance scholars of later periods. Despite its resilience, the Byzantine Empire faced numerous challenges that tested its survival. The rise of Arab conquests in the 7th century and the eventual fall of Constantinople in 1453 to the Ottoman Empire marked the end of Byzantine power. Yet, even in its decline, the Byzantine Empire left behind a legacy of Roman traditions that influenced subsequent empires and states, preserving a continuity of Roman thought and governance for centuries beyond the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The Roman Empire's influence extended far beyond its borders, shaping the territories it conquered through governance, culture, language, and infrastructure. This expansive influence played a critical role in unifying diverse regions under Roman rule, leaving a lasting legacy that persisted even after the empire's eventual decline. From the adoption of Roman laws and administrative systems to the spread of Latin and the construction of vast infrastructure projects, Roman influence became a hallmark of the empire's enduring impact on Western civilization. One of the most enduring contributions of Rome was its system of governance. The Roman administrative structure was highly organized, featuring a centralized authority that ensured stability across vast territories. Provinces were managed by appointed governors, often military commanders who also held judicial and executive powers, ensuring the smooth enforcement of Roman law. The Roman model of governance incorporated a blend of local traditions and Roman administrative practices, allowing for a balance between maintaining order and respecting regional customs. This system was replicated throughout the provinces from Britain to North Africa, making the Roman Empire one of the first true federations of states under a unified government. Roman law, particularly embodied in the Corpus Juris Civilis under Justinian I, served as the foundation for legal systems in much of the Western world. Roman legal concepts such as property rights, contracts, and the rule of law influenced medieval Europe and laid the groundwork for modern legal systems. The Roman focus on codifying laws and creating clear, consistent legal frameworks helped maintain peace and order across the empire, ensuring the protection of individual rights within the context of a centralized state. Latin, the language of the Roman elite and government, spread throughout the empire and became the lingua franca for administration, trade, and communication. Even after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Latin continued to evolve, giving rise to the Romance languages, such as Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Romanian. Latin's influence extended into education, theology, and the scientific community, shaping the intellectual foundations of medieval Europe and beyond. Ecclesiastical Latin, the form used by the Christian Church, ensured that Latin remained a key component of religious texts and scholarly discourse throughout the Middle Ages. Beyond governance and language, Roman infrastructure, particularly its roads, aqueducts, and urban planning, left a lasting impact on the territories it controlled. The Roman road system was a marvel of engineering, providing efficient means of communication and transport for armies, trade, and citizens. Roads such as the Via Appia and Via Claudia connected even the most remote regions, allowing for the rapid movement of goods, troops, and information across the empire. These roads not only facilitated economic prosperity, but also solidified Rome's control over its vast territories. Similarly, Roman aqueducts were pivotal in providing clean water to cities across the empire. These structures, built with remarkable engineering precision, supplied urban populations with fresh water for drinking, sanitation, and irrigation. The Roman emphasis on public health and urban development fostered the creation of thriving cities like Rome, Carthage, and Alexandria, which became hubs of commerce, culture, and administration. The architectural style of these cities, including grand amphitheaters, basilicas, and forums, was characterized by order, symmetry, and functionality, hallmarks of Roman urban planning. The spread of Roman influence also extended to military infrastructure, with well-organized forts, barracks, and defensive structures designed to protect Roman borders. Forts and garrisons were built along strategic frontiers, ensuring the security of provinces against external threats. This military infrastructure not only reinforced Rome's dominance, but also facilitated cultural exchange between Romans and the native populations of newly conquered regions. The legacy of Roman governance, language, and infrastructure persisted long after the empire's political dominance waned. The ideals of Roman law and administration were integrated into the political frameworks of medieval kingdoms and later European states, while the linguistic and architectural influence of Rome shaped the cultural and urban landscapes of Europe. Even during periods of fragmentation and invasions, the Roman foundations continued to provide a cohesive link between past and future civilizations. Roman engineering and innovation were at the heart of the Roman Empire's ability to manage, sustain, and expand its territories. Roman engineers and architects were among the most skilled in the ancient world, constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible through advancements in construction techniques, infrastructure, and technological innovation. From monumental buildings and public works to military fortifications and water management systems, Roman engineering left an indelible mark on the ancient world and laid the groundwork for future technological and architectural achievements. One of the most remarkable aspects of Roman engineering was their mastery of structural design. The use of concrete, a groundbreaking material developed by the Romans, revolutionized construction. Roman concrete was a combination of volcanic ash, lime, and water, which allowed for the creation of durable and long-lasting structures. This innovation enabled the construction of grand temples, aqueducts, and monumental arches, such as the iconic Arch of Constantine and Pantheon in Rome. The durability of these structures ensured that Roman architectural achievements withstood the test of time, often outlasting other ancient civilizations. Roman roads were another impressive engineering feat, designed not only for practical purposes, but also for military mobility and efficient transportation of goods. The Romans built an extensive network of roads, with more than 50,000 miles of paved highways connecting every corner of the empire. These roads facilitated commerce, communication, and the rapid movement of troops across regions, allowing Rome to maintain control over its vast territories. The Via Appia, one of the earliest Roman roads, exemplified the engineering precision and durability of Roman road-building techniques, featuring layers of gravel, stone, and asphalt that ensured the longevity of the thoroughfare. Aqueducts were perhaps one of the most sophisticated engineering projects undertaken by the Romans. These structures provided a reliable supply of fresh water to cities and settlements across the empire. The engineering behind Roman aqueducts showcased remarkable hydraulic engineering and precision. Arch-supported bridges and tunnels transported water from distant sources to urban centers, creating an infrastructure that transformed public health, sanitation, and agriculture. The maintenance and operation of aqueducts demanded highly sophisticated engineering expertise, ensuring that the water flow was consistent and reliable for centuries. Roman military engineering was equally advanced, particularly in the construction of defensive structures and fortifications. Forts and walls were strategically placed along frontiers to protect against invasions and maintain the empire's borders. The use of concentric defenses, watchtowers, and intricate siege systems allowed Roman armies to repel enemies effectively. The fortifications built along the Rhine and Danube rivers demonstrate the Romans' understanding of the importance of strong military infrastructure to maintain imperial stability. Another notable innovation was Roman urban planning. Cities such as Rome, Carthage, and Alexandria were meticulously designed with grid layouts, forums, basilicas, and thermal baths integrated into the urban fabric. Roman architects and engineers paid careful attention to the needs of urban populations, ensuring efficient systems for sewage disposal, public spaces, and marketplaces. The use of bathhouses and sewage systems set a precedent for later civilizations in terms of maintaining public health and sanitation. Roman engineering also extended into public utilities and innovations that improve the quality of life. Examples include the development of cisterns, bridges, and domes, structures that demonstrated the Romans' ability to address complex logistical and environmental challenges. These innovations not only ensured the functionality of Roman cities, but also symbolized the empire's dominance over nature and the environment. The legacy of Roman engineering and innovation persists in modern construction, infrastructure, and urban development. Many principles of Roman design, such as the use of arches, vaults, and concrete, remain foundational to contemporary architecture. The Roman emphasis on functionality, durability, and beauty influenced countless generations, creating a lasting impact on the built environment that continues to shape the world today. The Roman military was once considered one of the most formidable and disciplined forces in the ancient world. From the early republic through the height of the empire, Roman legions were renowned for their strength, organization, and adaptability in warfare. However, by the later stages of the Western Roman Empire, the once unbeatable military machine faced numerous challenges that contributed to its decline. The combination of internal corruption, political instability, economic strain, and external threats gradually eroded the strength and effectiveness of the Roman military, ultimately leading to its transformation and the empire's eventual fall. During the early and mid-Republic, Rome's military was built around the concept of citizen soldiers, free, land-owning Roman citizens who were trained for military service in times of war. This system produced highly disciplined and well-organized legions capable of rapid mobilization and efficient battlefield tactics. The heavy infantry, supported by cavalry and auxiliary troops, formed the backbone of Roman military power. The legions, with their distinct red tunics and shields, were disciplined units that operated with precision and flexibility, adapting their strategies to a variety of opponents, from the Samnites in Italy to the Carthaginian forces in the Punic Wars. However, as the Roman Empire expanded its territory, the demands placed on the military grew exponentially. Maintaining a standing army large enough to protect such a vast expanse became an increasingly complex challenge. By the late Republic and early Empire, Rome relied heavily on professional soldiers, many of whom were recruited from provinces outside of Italy. These auxiliaries brought valuable experience and local knowledge, but also introduced internal tensions between native populations and Roman control. The dependence on non-citizen soldiers led to an erosion of the original Roman ideal of military service, where only those with land and personal stake in Rome's welfare fought. Political instability further weakened the military. The rise of ambitious military commanders like Gaius Marius and later Julius Caesar led to conflicts between the Senate and military leaders vying for power. The militarization of politics shifted the focus away from Rome's traditional republican institutions, leading to the creation of powerful warlords whose personal armies could challenge the state's authority. After the establishment of the Roman Empire under Augustus, the military became even more intertwined with the imperial administration. The emperors, seeking stability, increasingly used the military as a tool to assert their dominance over internal rivals and suppress dissent, resulting in corruption and favoritism within the ranks. Economic strain also contributed to the decline of Roman military power. Sustaining large legions required immense resources, money for training, equipment, pay, and provisions. With the empire's growing reliance on slave labor and a shrinking tax base, coupled with increased spending on infrastructure and public works, the military faced shortages in funding. The recruitment of soldiers from impoverished provinces exacerbated this issue, as soldiers often had to finance their own equipment or were poorly trained and inadequately supplied. The lack of resources meant that Roman legions were frequently outmatched by more mobile, well-equipped adversaries like the Germanic tribes, who were adept at guerrilla warfare and rapidly shifting tactics. External pressures further weakened the Roman military. The rise of powerful barbarian confederations, such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns, overwhelmed Roman defenses in the 4th and 5th centuries CE. The Roman legions, once dominant on the battlefield, were unable to contend with the sheer numbers and adaptability of these foes. The defeat at the Battle of Adrianople in 378 CE marked a significant turning point, exposing the vulnerabilities of Roman forces and leading to significant losses of territory, including much of the western provinces. Additionally, the fragmentation of the Western Roman Empire placed strain on the military, as provincial commanders began to act independently, creating a lack of central coordination. Without unified leadership, the legions were forced to operate on an ad hoc basis, resulting in ineffective responses to external invasions. The decline of loyalty toward the central imperial authority further deteriorated the cohesion of the Roman military, leaving provinces more vulnerable to external and internal threats. The transformation of Roman military power was not merely one of decline, but also adaptation. In the Byzantine Empire, for example, the Roman military evolved to address new challenges, incorporating tactics that emphasized defensive fortifications, naval supremacy, and the use of heavy cavalry and archers. The use of mercenaries and locally recruited forces became more common, reflecting the shift toward a more fragmented military system. However, this shift also led to the eventual decline of centralized Roman power in the West, as local leaders and provincial forces began asserting their own authority. Ultimately, the decline of Roman military power was a multifaceted process involving political instability, economic pressures, and the increasing complexity of managing an empire that spanned vast territories. While Roman military innovation left a lasting legacy, the empire's inability to maintain its dominance through changing circumstances marked a critical turning point in the history of the ancient world. The Roman Empire left an indelible mark on Western civilization, shaping the political, legal, cultural, and intellectual foundations of modern Europe. From its early expansion as a city-state to its peak as a vast empire governing a diverse range of peoples and territories, the Romans influenced the development of European civilization in numerous ways that continue to resonate today. While the Roman Empire itself fell in the West, its legacy lived on through the spread of Roman ideals, institutions, and practices that would be adapted, preserved, and transformed by future generations. One of the most significant aspects of Roman legacy is the continuation of Roman law and legal traditions. The Roman legal system, particularly embodied in the Corpus Juris Civilis under Emperor Justinian I, became the foundation of much of European legal systems. Principles such as the idea of justice, the rule of law, codification of legal principles, and the protection of individual rights were all integral aspects of Roman jurisprudence that would influence the development of modern civil law traditions. Even countries that are part of the common law tradition, like the United States, owe much of their legal philosophy to Roman legal concepts that emphasized equality before the law and the administration of justice based on reason legislation. The Roman political model also shaped the development of European governance. The early Roman Republic's establishment of checks and balances, a senate for deliberation, and elected magistrates influenced many later democratic systems. Even though the Roman Empire itself transitioned toward a more autocratic form of governance under emperors, the underlying Roman ideals of civic participation and the importance of law remained influential. The structures of Roman provincial governance, with appointed governors and a hierarchical bureaucracy, were later used as models for managing large empires and states in Europe during the medieval period and the Renaissance. The spread of the Latin language also played a crucial role in preserving Roman intellectual and cultural influence. Latin, as the language of administration, literature, and education, became the foundation for the development of many Romance languages and the primary means of communication in the Western world for centuries. Even after the decline of Latin as a spoken language, it continued to be used in religious, scholarly, and legal contexts throughout the Middle Ages. The continued use of Latin preserved much of the classical heritage and allowed scholars of the Renaissance to rediscover ancient texts and Roman thought, laying the groundwork for the intellectual revival of the classical era. Roman architecture and engineering also left a lasting legacy. The grandeur of Roman urban planning, aqueducts, basilicas, and amphitheaters shaped the development of Western cities and architecture. The Roman use of concrete, arches, and domes inspired later architectural movements throughout Europe, particularly during the Renaissance, Baroque, and Neoclassical periods. The monumental structures that once represented the power and sophistication of Rome became symbols of authority, stability, and civilization, inspiring generations of architects and builders. In addition to legal, political, and architectural contributions, Roman culture influenced Western art, philosophy, and education. Roman art and literature, such as the works of Virgil, Cicero, and Ovid, provided a rich legacy that would shape European humanism and classical learning. The Roman emphasis on education, rhetoric, and public speaking remained central to the development of academic and intellectual traditions in Western Europe. The study of classical texts was essential in shaping the Renaissance and the later Enlightenment, where thinkers like Montesquieu, Rousseau, and Voltaire drew inspiration from Roman republicanism and legal ideals. The Roman emphasis on civic responsibility, personal duty, and the role of the state in society also contributed to the development of ideas surrounding governance, social organization, and the rights of citizens. The Roman notion of the patria, the idea of devotion to one's country and shared responsibilities, became a cornerstone of nationalist and civic movements throughout Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries. Furthermore, the concept of Romanitas, the shared Roman identity that transcended local identities, helped shape the sense of unity that underpinned the Holy Roman Empire and other political entities in medieval and modern Europe. Even though the Western Roman Empire fell, its legacy persisted through the Byzantine Empire in the East and through the cultural and institutional continuity maintained by the Church and medieval European states. The Byzantine Empire, in particular, preserved Roman administrative practices, legal systems, and classical knowledge throughout the Middle Ages, which would eventually be transmitted to the West during the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration. In summary, the legacy of the Roman Empire is one of profound influence on Western civilization, encompassing law, governance, architecture, language, culture, and intellectual development. Through its contributions, Rome shaped the foundations upon which modern Europe was built, ensuring that the ideals of order, reason, and civic responsibility continued to flourish throughout history. The enduring legacy of the Roman Empire serves as a reminder of the power of innovation, governance, and culture in shaping the course of history. Even in the face of political decline and fragmentation, Roman ideals continued to influence the development of Western civilization, inspiring future generations to build upon its rich heritage. From law and governance to art and architecture, the contributions of Rome remain deeply embedded in the foundation of modern society, ensuring that its influence will be felt for centuries to come.